Why was she the only one awake before dawn? And why did the silence feel like a warning she could almost recognize? Carolyn Spencer stood alone in the dim warehouse, fingers hovering over a battered inventory tablet, but her attention drifted somewhere far beyond supply lists and barcodes. The compound was quiet, too quiet for a place that was supposed to feel safe. In the half-light before sunrise, even the air felt like it was waiting. She tried to ignore it. Routine was supposed to calm her. That's why she came in early. That's why she kept her head down. That's why for 14 long, quiet months she'd lived a life built on small tasks, counting ammunition crates, logging deliveries, checking expiry labels on medical kits. A life where she never touched a rifle. A life where nobody asked questions about who she used to be. But this morning, the stillness carried weight, as if the desert itself was holding its breath. Carol took in a slow inhale, and her fingers tightened around the tablet. Not fear, not stress. Recognition. Something was coming. She told herself it was nothing, that she was imagining it, that she wasn't that person anymore, the one who felt danger before anyone else saw it, the one who read terrain like language, the one who spent 6 years pulling triggers for a living. She wasn't her past. She wasn't the weapon they'd trained her to be. She repeated that lie like prayer. Then her radio crackled. A single transmission, static, a tower guard's voice, tense in a way only experience could hear. Operations, I've got movement on Observation Ridge. Single individual, 650 out. Carol froze. The tablet suddenly felt heavy in her hands. Her vision narrowed. The old instincts chained, buried, locked away, pulled taut like wires under her skin. Movement on the ridge at dawn. That wasn't normal. That was reconnaissance. That was someone checking sightlines. That was how it always began. Her pulse thudded once, heavy, unwilling, and she forced herself to breathe. No, not again. Not here, not ever. She wasn't part of security. She wasn't on the threat board. She was a logistics coordinator. She handled toilet paper and spare parts. She had spent 14 months convincing everyone and herself that she belonged in the quiet corners of the compound, away from danger, away from rifles, away from death. She told her body to relax. It didn't listen. She crossed the warehouse, keyed in a login Phil had given her months ago just in case, and pulled up the camera feeds. Technically, she shouldn't have had access. Technically, she should have stayed out of it. But technically, didn't matter when something felt wrong. Feed 17 flickered to life. Grainy pre-dawn light, shadows stretched long across the rocky ridge. She zoomed in. Nothing visible. If someone was prone, they'd be invisible at that angle. Old memories surged, not images but sensations. The feel of a scope pressed against her cheekbone. The rhythm of controlling breath. The silence before a trigger break. She shut her eyes and breathed once more. No, she wasn't doing that again. She couldn't. But the ridge remained still, watching, waiting. And across the compound the world slowly woke, tower guards shifting positions, security operators grabbing radios, the chain reaction of heightened alertness spreading through the facility like a ripple, nothing overt, nothing loud. Just tension. Just silence with teeth. Carol tried to go back to her work, tried to count a box of iodine packets, tried to focus on the life she'd built, one without gunfire, without violence, without the ghosts that still visited her in sleep. But then the sun crested the horizon, and everything changed. The East Tower guard's voice cut through her radio, sharper this time, urgent. Ops, I've got multiple contacts. 7, no, 8 individuals, all prone, all set up along the ridge. 8. Her tablet slipped from her hands and hit the floor. 8 snipers. 8 rifles. 8 firing lanes. Perfect triangulation. Professional setup. She didn't need to see the ridge to know what it meant. She'd seen this before. She survived this before. And she knew exactly what was about to happen. The compound exploded into motion, security running, shouting, grabbing gear, Warren calling medical prep, Rachel sprinting toward a tower, Owen yelling for orders from Art, panic trying to hold itself together under training. Carol stood frozen in the doorway of the warehouse as the transmission came in. The sound that ended the quiet. One crack. A single, perfect, horrifying crack. And someone screamed, "Art is down." She didn't see the shot hit the commander. She didn't need to. She felt the recoil memory of the weapon that fired it, the distance, the angle. Then a second shot. Clayton dropped. Armor useless. And still no visible targets. Not from the ground. Not with their weapons. Not at those distances. Carol's breath broke in her chest. It was starting. She pressed her back against the wall as the ridge erupted, 8 rifles firing in orchestrated precision. The sound of bodies hitting dirt, shouts turning into screams. The chaos of men and women pinned down by ghosts they couldn't see. The air filled with snapping rounds, dust kicked up around her feet. Someone yelled for covering fire. Someone else begged for a medic. Someone screamed a name she didn't recognize. And all Carol could do was stand there, hands shaking with a truth she didn't want to face. People were dying. Good people. People she ate breakfast beside. People who laughed with her in the cafeteria, who shared stories, who trusted her, who believed she was just logistics. They were dying. Because she was pretending to be someone she was. Because she had tried to bury the part of herself she hated most, the part that could stop this. A round cracked against the wall inches from her head. Stone chips hit her cheek. The ridge was sweeping fire across the compound with cruel precision. Another scream. Another fall. Another life bleeding into desert dust. Her throat tightened. This wasn't their fight. Not really. It was hers. And she'd been running from it for 14 months. She pressed trembling fingers against her radio, hesitated for the barest second, and finally spoke words she never thought she'd say again. "Warren, it's Carol. I can stop this." Her voice was steady. Her heart was, "I need 30 seconds of covering fire and access to the armory." There was silence, pure, stunned disbelief, before Warren replied, voice cracking under pressure. "Carol, what are you talking about? Get to shelter." She closed her eyes. There was no turning back now. "I'm former Army SFODD," she said softly, like confessing a sin. "Counter-sniper operations, 6 years, 156 confirmed eliminations. A heartbeat. A breath. A decision. I can neutralize them all. But I need 30 seconds." The radio went dead quiet. Then Warren's next words were like a switch flipping across the entire compound. "All units covering fire, give her 30 seconds, Armory code 4729 Alpha." "Carol, go." Just one word echoed in her mind as she stepped out from cover, bullets slicing the air around her. Enough. She ran. Through gunfire. Through chaos. Through the life she'd been trying to build. Straight back into the one she'd tried to bury. And in that moment, the moment she sprinted across open ground toward the armory, Carolyn Spencer stopped pretending. She knew exactly what she was. Not a logistics coordinator. Not someone safe. Not someone normal. She was a weapon. And the ridge was about to learn exactly what kind. Why did the world fall silent when she reached the armory door, when everything around her was supposed to be chaos? Carol could still hear the gunfire, still feel the thud of rounds hitting walls and dirt, still sense the terror rolling through the compound, But standing at the steel armory entrance, everything inside her went still, like a storm collapsing into a single, focused point. Her fingers hovered over the keypad. She hadn't touched a weapon in over a year. She promised herself she never would again. She'd built walls around that part of her mind, bricked in memories she didn't want, locked away instincts she feared would come alive the second she gave them freedom. But people were screaming. People she knew. People who trusted her. And out on that ridge were 8 professionals, steady, disciplined, and patient, executing a coordinated kill box with terrifying precision. She'd seen this tactic before. She'd trained with teams who used it. The fact they were firing so cleanly meant something even worse. No panic. No rush. No mistakes. They were confident. They thought the compound was already theirs. A shadow flickered across her expression. They hadn't met her yet. She typed the code. The lock disengaged with a heavy metallic click. Inside the armory, rows of rifles glinted under halogen lights. Boxes of ammunition lined shelves. Vests hung neatly on hooks. The smell, oil, metal, gunpowder, hit her like a memory she wasn't ready for. Her hands hesitated for just a heartbeat. Then she moved. Not rushed. Not frantic. Precise. She grabbed the M24 first, her old comfort. Wooden stock replaced with fiberglass. Fluted barrel. Bipod already attached. It wasn't the most powerful rifle in the rack, but she didn't need power. She needed consistency. She needed a weapon that acted like an extension of her bones. Next, the scope. Not the compound standard issue. She dug deeper, found the higher-grade optic buried in a case, something someone had ordered months ago but never calibrated. She lifted it, felt the weight, looked through the glass. Crystal clarity. No distortion. Her breath eased. She set the rifle on the table, pulled cleaning rods, oiled the bolt, inspected the crown, checked the chamber, adjusted the bipod tension. Movement so methodical, so automatic. It was as if the last 14 months had never happened. But they had. And maybe that was why her fingers shook only once, just for a second, before steadying again. Outside, a round struck the armory wall, sending dust showering across the concrete. She didn't flinch. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. She could hear them. The rhythm of the shots. The spacing. The cadence of each firing position. The way one sniper waited half a second longer than the others. The one who exhaled too loud before pulling the trigger. The leader who fired first and stopped last. 8 different signatures. 8 different personalities. 8 different targets. Her targets. Then a voice over the radio, breathless, urgent. "Carol, we're pinned. We can't hold this." She opened her eyes, calm now. "I'm on my way," she replied softly. The calm wasn't bravery. It was purpose. She grabbed a box of ammo, slid it into the pouch on her belt, slung the rifle across her shoulder, and stepped back out into the desert heat, into the chaos, into the world she tried so hard to leave behind. The sun had risen fully now, casting sharp, unforgiving light across the compound. Smoke drifted from burning supply crates. A truck lay overturned, riddled with holes. Medics crawled low, dragging bleeding bodies into cover. Rachel was pressed behind a broken wall, firing blind bursts toward the ridge. Warren knelt over a wounded operator, applying pressure to a chest wound with trembling hands. People were dying. But when they saw her, actually saw her, their expressions changed. And for the first time, she saw something she hadn't seen since her last deployment. Trust. Not the everyday kind. Not the casual, friendly kind. The desperate kind. The kind people give when they know you're their only hope. Carol felt her throat tighten. She didn't want this. She didn't want to be this. But she couldn't walk away. A round slammed into the tower, sending shrapnel raining down. Warren ducked and shouted over the gunfire. "You sure about this?" She nodded once. "Give me 30 seconds of suppression fire." 30 seconds. That's all I need. She didn't wait for arguments. She sprinted. Across open ground. Across dirt ripped apart by bullets. Across the same killing field where 2 men had already fallen. Rounds snapped past her shoulders. The ridge was adjusting. They had seen her. She felt the burn of air displacement as a bullet missed her arm by inches. Another round kicked sand into her eyes, but she never slowed. She counted steps in her head, measured angles, calculated their corrections. She dove behind a collapsed water tanker, breathing hard but steady. It wasn't perfect cover, but it didn't need to be. She just needed to reach high ground, a place with a view of the ridge that wasn't obstructed by buildings. There was only one spot. The old comms outpost. 3 stories tall. Abandoned. Ladder half rusted. Perfect. If she could reach it. She peeked around the tanker and saw Rachel leaning out from behind her wall, firing a long burst that made 2 of the ridge snipers duck. "Rachel," she yelled, "left flank suppression now." Rachel didn't ask why, didn't question her. She just fired. And the compound followed her lead. Dozens of rifles opened up at once, throwing dust and stone into the air around the ridge. Not accurate, not meant to kill, but meant to blind, distract, force heads down. Carol ran again. Her legs burned. Her breath rasped. Her chest ached. She wasn't 25 anymore. She wasn't trained up, battlefield ready, always in shape Carol Spencer. She was tired. She was rusty. She was scared. But she didn't stop. She reached the comms building, slammed against the concrete wall, and immediately climbed the exterior ladder, each rung groaning beneath her weight. Bullets struck the metal, sending vibrations through her arms. One pinged off just below her boot. She climbed faster. Halfway up, she made the mistake of looking back down. Not at the ground. At the bodies. At the trail of blood Warren was trying to stop with shaking hands. At the operator with a hole in his shoulder. At the young guard Carol barely knew lying motionless near the supply shed. She almost froze. Almost. But then she looked up at the ridge. And every reason she hated her past became the reason she had to become it again. She climbed the last few rungs, swung over the ledge and dropped low. Broken crates and rusted equipment littered the rooftop, perfect for improvised cover. She set her rifle down carefully, exhaled slowly, and let the world fall away. For a moment she just breathed. In, hold, out. She opened the bipod. Checked the chamber. Adjusted the scope. Tested the wind with a raised hand. Felt it brush against her palm. Not much drift. Barely 2 inches at this distance. Her heartbeat slowed. Her muscles loosened. Her mind sharpened. She lay prone, settled the stock into her shoulder, and sighted down the ridge. 8 firing positions. 8 shadows. 8 glints of sunlight off scopes. She saw them. And one by one, they were about to see her too. Her radio crackled. "Carol, what now?" Her finger brushed the trigger. Her breath quieted. "Now," she whispered, "I take them back." She centered her reticle. And the world narrowed to a single target. Why did the first target hesitate, just for a fraction of a second, right before Carol squeezed the trigger? At this distance, hesitation was everything. A blink, a twitch, a tiny shift of weight on the elbow. It told her who was experienced and who was pretending to be, and the sniper in her crosshairs had just made a mistake. He thought the compound was panicking too badly to spot him. He thought he owned the ridge. He thought nobody could see him behind that jagged rock shelf. He was wrong. Carol's cheek pressed against the stock as she slowed her breathing until her heartbeat no longer jarred the reticle. She didn't think about killing. She never let herself think about killing. She thought about stopping. Stopping men who intended to murder everyone she knew. Stopping the fear swallowing the compound. Stopping the past from repeating itself. She exhaled. Steadied. Squeezed. The sound of her rifle cracked through the air, low, sharp, precise. No echo, no wasted vibration. On the ridge, the target's head jerked back, not dramatic, not cinematic, just final. His rifle slid from his hands. His body slumped into the dirt so quietly that none of his team even noticed his death. One. She didn't say it out loud. She never counted kills, not anymore, but her body remembered the rhythm, the calculations, the responsibility. A round snapped past her rooftop, grazing the corner of the concrete barrier. Another sniper had seen the muzzle flash. They were adjusting. She shifted position, sliding on her elbows across the dusty rooftop. She didn't stay in one spot longer than a few seconds. That rule had kept her alive through more missions than she wanted to remember. She peeked through the scope again, searching. The second sniper revealed himself by accident, a puff of dust behind him. He'd shifted his knee, too much movement, too confident. Carol exhaled halfway, held it. The second shot echoed. Two. The compound below her erupted in cheers, but short-lived. The ridge fired back harder, angrier. Rounds hammered the ground. A tower window shattered. Someone screamed for cover. "Carol, they're closing in on our left flank," Rachel shouted over the radio, breathless. "We can't hold them." Carol didn't respond. She was already shifting again, already calculating, already reading the terrain. The third sniper was smarter. He stayed deeper behind his cover, showing only the tiniest sliver of his barrel. He fired twice, controlled shots aiming at the medics. He was good. She was better. She dialed .25 mils of elevation, adjusted for wind that had just begun to pick up, barely perceptible, but enough to move a bullet an inch at this range. 1 inch was the difference between neutralizing a threat and warning him. She didn't give warnings. She let her breath fall to nothing. Let the world blur at the edges. Let her heartbeat fade into silence. She squeezed. The sniper's barrel snapped sideways as the bullet struck his cheekbone. His body went limp. 3. Her radio crackled again. "Carol, holy hell, are you actually?" "Warren," she said softly, "keep your head down." Another round hit the base of the comms building. Dust rained onto her hands. She wiped it off and shifted once more, crawling behind a rusted generator. She breathed in the smell, metal, and sun-baked dust. It was the smell of every deployment she'd ever survived. She hated it, but it steadied her. On the ridge, the remaining snipers had realized something was wrong. 3 of their teammates hadn't fired in nearly 20 seconds. They broke formation, another mistake. They should have stayed hidden, stayed patient, stayed disciplined. But panic was louder than training. She watched as 2 of them peeked out at the same time. Perfect. She adjusted her aim between them, ready to take the one who lingered the longest. Timing was everything, predicting hesitation, reading intent before it happened. One of them flinched at incoming suppressive fire from the compound. Her shot cracked. His face slammed into the dirt. 4. The other dove to the side, rolling behind a rock and disappearing. That one would be trouble later. She moved again, crossing the rooftop in a low crawl. A bullet punched through the concrete inches from her hip. Another grazed the edge of the vent pipe she slid behind. The 6th sniper was hunting her. Good. She preferred the predators. They were predictable. She listened, eyes closed, feeling the air shift around her as the next round cut the rooftop. She pinpointed the angle. 2 o'clock, high perch, slightly offset from the others. She opened her eyes, rolled to the side, scoped in. There, a small silhouette behind a narrow ledge, just his scope glinting in the sun. She couldn't see his face, couldn't see his body. She had 1 inch of visible target. She exhaled. Her shot shattered his scope. A scream echoed faintly across the ridge as he recoiled backward. 5. She did not watch him fall. Her hands trembled for a moment, not from fear, from memory. She shook it off like she had 1,000 times before. Gunfire erupted below. Rachel was pinned. Warren was dragging another wounded guard behind the mess hall. Someone yelled, "We need a medic," followed by a choking sound. Carol didn't look down. If she looked, she'd freeze. If she froze, someone else would die. Her job was above. Her job was distance. Her job was precision, not panic. She moved again. The rooftop was hot now, heat waves rising off concrete, distorting her vision. Sweat dripped down her cheeks, stinging her eyes. She blinked it away. She had to stay focused. The sixth sniper, the one who dove earlier, reappeared. Stupid. Too soon. Too desperate. He leaned out too far, trying to locate her. His mistake. Her opening. The shot was smooth. Clean. Quiet. Six. A sudden explosion rocked the compound, one of the fuel drums igniting under stray fire. Flames roared upward, black smoke curling across the sky. Carol flinched. Smoke was her enemy. Heat distortion, wind shift, visibility ruined. She wiped her forehead, smearing dirt across her face. "Carol, we're losing ground," Warren shouted. "We need." "To left," she whispered. "Just hold." The seventh sniper was crawling uphill, trying to reposition to a more dominant angle. His movement was good, efficient, professional. He belonged on this ridge. He knew terrain. He knew hiding spots. But he didn't know her. She tracked him through the brush, measured the pattern of his elbows, the rhythm of how he shifted his hips, the way he always paused for half a second before turning. She fired during the pause. 7. One left. The leader. She could feel it in her bones, the way the firing pattern had changed, the way the ridge fell silent after each of her shots. The leader wasn't retreating. He wasn't repositioning. He was waiting. And she hated that. She scanned the ridge, sweeping left to right. Nothing, no shadow, no silhouette, no glint, no movement. Where was he? She slowed her breathing, lowered her heartbeat, and listened. Wind. Smoke. Faint shouting from the compound below. She ignored them all. She listened for the one sound that didn't belong. A pebble. A shift of weight. A fabric scrape. A breath. Then, there, a soft crunch of gravel, barely a whisper, but from an angle that no sniper should have been able to reach unless. He'd circled behind the ridge. He was flanking. A professional move. A dangerous move. A smart move. Carol's pulse quickened, her muscles tensed. This one knew the game. She repositioned herself, crawling to the opposite end of the rooftop. She aimed toward the hidden slope behind the ridge. There was no clear shot, only guesswork. But guesswork wasn't luck. It was experience. She waited. Seconds passed. Sweat dripped onto her trigger hand. Then the leader finally revealed himself, just for a moment, checking her last firing position from a higher vantage point. She fired before he even finished rising. The shot hit home. 8. The compound went silent. For the first time since dawn, silence wasn't fear. It was relief. Carol lowered her rifle, breathing shaking slightly, eyes stinging, not from sweat, but from something deeper she didn't have time to name. She stood slowly, staring at the ridge. Only then did she whisper to nobody, "It's over." But deep down she knew it was. Something in how the leader moved. Something in the formation. Something in the way they attacked. This was no random assault. This was a message. And whatever the message was, it wasn't finished. Why did her hands start shaking only after the 8th target fell, when the danger had already passed? It wasn't fear. She'd learned years ago that fear was sharp, fast, a blade that cut through logic. This wasn't that. This was something slower, heavier, like her body had waited until it was safe to break apart. Carol stood on the rooftop with the rifle hanging loosely from her hands, staring at the ridge where 8 lives had ended because she'd stepped back into the person she never wanted to be again. The smoke from the burning fuel drums curled upward, blurring the sky into a distorted haze. It was too quiet now, the kind of quiet that felt like an unanswered question. Below her, the compound was slowly finding its breath again. Medics rushed out. Guards shouted names. Someone cried out when they found a friend still alive. Someone else cried for the one they couldn't save. Carol lowered to one knee. Not from injury. From weight. The rifle rested across her legs. She ran her thumb over the worn stock. She hadn't touched a weapon in 14 months, but the grooves under her fingers felt like scars on her own skin, familiar, permanent, never truly healing. She closed her eyes. Memory ambushed her. A rooftop in Kandahar. A valley in Mosul. A night so quiet she still heard the breath of the man she'd shot from nearly a mile away. The ghosts she thought she buried were awake again. She opened her eyes quickly, forcing them away from the past and back to the ridge, back to the vantage point where 8 coordinated professionals had tried to massacre an entire compound before breakfast. But something was wrong. Something in the pattern. Something she couldn't unsee. 8 snipers. Too many for recon. Too few for a full assault. They weren't trying to take the compound. They weren't even trying to occupy it. They were trying to erase it. Quick, clean, surgical. And that meant someone had sent them. Her stomach tightened. Who? Why? What did they want? And what if this wasn't over? Footsteps thundered up the comms tower ladder. Warren's voice echoed upward, forced and breathless. "Carol, you up there?" She took one last look at the ridge before turning away, lifting her rifle. Her hands had steadied. Her breathing had stabilized. The sniper was back. Not by choice, but by necessity. She climbed down the ladder slowly. The moment her boots hit the dirt, Warren was there, sweat-streaked, dust-covered, his sleeves soaked in someone's blood. His eyes widened when he saw her rifle. And for the first time since she'd known him, Warren looked afraid of her. He tried to hide it. People always tried. They forced a smile or an awkward chuckle or that familiar line, "Didn't know you had that in you," as if killing was a trick, not a wound. But Warren wasn't smiling now. He wasn't pretending. He was seeing what she had worked so hard to hide. He swallowed hard. "Carol, you." "Who's hurt?" she asked quietly. He blinked, thrown off. "Clayton, he's stable. 2 others are critical. We're still counting." She nodded once and brushed past him. He hesitated, then followed. People parted as she walked. Some stared at her rifle. Some stared at her face. Some whispered her name like it was something fragile or forbidden. Carol, did she really? She got all 8. No way. She saved us. She saved us. But one voice, the closest one, made her flinch. Rachel. She ran over, her face streaked with soot, her right arm bleeding from a graze. She stopped right in front of Carol, breath catching. "Was that you?" she whispered. "The shots?" Carol nodded once. Rachel's eyes softened, relief, awe, something like gratitude, but then something else slipped in. A question. The same question Carol always saw once people learned what she used to be. What did it cost you? But Rachel didn't ask. Not yet. She only touched Carol's arm gently. Thank you. Carol looked away. Praise didn't sit well on her skin. She paced toward the medical tent, awkwardly, stiffly, rifle still slung across her shoulder. It felt wrong carrying a weapon here, around people who had only known her as the quiet logistics girl who worked alone, who avoided loud places, who never fought, never argued, never looked anyone directly in the eye for too long. Now they looked at her like she was made of something dangerous. Inside the tent, the smell of antiseptic was thick. Machines beeped. Medics rushed around. 2 wounded guards lay on stretchers, pale and shaking. One was unconscious. Carol stopped at the threshold. Blood. Bandages. Chest wounds. The sound of someone struggling to breathe. Her body reacted before her mind did. Her chest tightened, her steps faltered. This was too familiar. Too close. Too loud. She took a slow breath. Stepped back outside. The sun felt harsh on her face. Warren followed her out. Carol, you okay? She nodded. He didn't believe it. She didn't care. What were they? He asked quietly. Mercenaries, government cartel, who sends 8 snipers. She looked at him finally. You don't send 8 snipers, she said softly. You send 4, maybe 5. 8 means something else. What? She swallowed. You send 8 when the target is highly trained or highly valuable. Warren stared at her. Are you saying we were the target? Carol looked back at the ridge, jaw tightening. No, she murmured. They weren't after the compound. He frowned. Then who? She didn't answer, because she wasn't sure she was ready to say it out loud. Instead, she scanned the area. Something felt wrong. Something was missing. Something wasn't aligning with the way the team had operated. The leader's angle. The precision. The timing. The dawn attack. The silence afterward. This wasn't an assassination. It was a test run. Someone wanted to see how fast the compound could respond. Where its weaknesses were. Who stepped up. Who didn't. And worst of all, someone wanted to see her. How quickly she revealed herself. How well she could still shoot. Whether she'd left her past behind, or if it still lived in her bones. A cold shiver crept down her spine. Someone out there knew she was here. Warren followed her gaze. Carol, what are you thinking? She spoke quietly, controlled. They found us. He stiffened. Found who? She looked him in the eyes for the first time since the attack. Found me. His breath caught. But before he could ask, a distant crack echoed across the desert. Not a sniper shot. Something heavier. A mortar. No. Another crack. Another. Rachel came running from the opposite side of the compound, eyes wide. Carol's satellite just picked up movement west of the ridge. A lot of movement. Carol closed her eyes. Of course. The snipers were only phase 1. Warren, she said, voice steady, tell everyone to prepare for a second wave. He paled. Already. She nodded. They flushed me out. Now they're coming. Why did the horizon look wrong? Like the desert itself was shifting, bending, hiding something beneath the heat. Carol stepped closer, squinting through the smoke drifting across the compound. The ridge was still, silent, littered with bodies no one had retrieved yet. But beyond it, far beyond it, something moved in slow, deliberate patterns. Not panicked. Not chaotic. Not disorganized. Coordinated. Rachel reached her side, chest heaving, blood running down her arm. Warren came up behind them, clutching his radio, face pale. "I counted at least 12 heat signatures," Rachel said, breath shaky. "But that's just what the satellite picked up. Could be more, could be." "Could be a platoon," Warren finished quietly. Carol didn't speak. She watched the shadows. She watched how they stopped, crouched, repositioned, fanned out, regrouped. Movements so disciplined they triggered a memory she wished she didn't have. This wasn't a mob. This wasn't bandits. This wasn't mercenaries with mismatched gear. This was trained. Highly trained. Her throat tightened. Rachel finally looked at her, eyes wide. "Carol, who did you piss off?" She didn't answer. Her gaze stayed locked on the horizon, because answering meant admitting something she'd tried to bury for years. Warren stepped closer, lowering his voice. "Are you telling us this is about you?" She didn't flinch, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she turned toward the compound. The flames, the bodies, the terrified faces, the wounded crying inside the medical tent. "I need the operations room," she said. Warren blinked. "Carol, wait, what are we even dealing with?" She started walking. "They're coming for me," she said quietly, "but they'll take all of you to reach me." Rachel swore under her breath. "Carol, what the hell did you do?" Carol kept walking. Not fast. Not slow. Just purposefully. She didn't owe them this. She didn't owe them anything, but people had died. People were hurt. And if she didn't explain, they wouldn't know how to survive what was coming. When she entered the operations room, everyone went silent. Maps scattered across the table, radios buzzing, operators with bandaged arms and blood on their clothes, someone crying softly in the corner. They all turned and stared at her like she was a ghost. And maybe she was. Carol placed her rifle gently on the table. "I need to see the full satellite feed," she said. No one moved. It wasn't defiance. It was fear. Fear of what she was. Fear of what she knew. Fear of what she could do. Warren cleared his throat. "All right, bring it up." The main screen flickered. Grainy satellite footage stabilized into a view of the desert west of the ridge. Dust clouds, moving shapes, heat signatures too dense for any local militia. Carol stepped closer. She pointed to the formation spreading in a half-moon arc. "There," she said, "that's a staggered advance, offset by 6 meters between each operator. That's special operations spacing." She pointed to a group, moving in pairs behind the main line. "Those are breachers, see the heavier equipment. They're carrying charges." She pointed again. "And those 3 at the far right, flank security." She didn't turn around when she added, "This isn't random, this isn't local, this isn't a rogue attack." She finally faced them. "This is a contracted kill team." A collective inhale filled the room. Warren's voice cracked. "Why send a kill team after a logistics coordinator?" Carol met his eyes. "I'm not a logistics coordinator." Silence. She rested both hands on the table, bracing herself as if the truth weighed more than gravity. "Before I came here," she said, her voice low but steady, "I was attached to a classified unit under Army SFODD counter-sniper operations, target interdiction, long-range overwatch, black side missions." Rachel frowned. Black side. Carol hesitated. This was the part she hated. The part she never wanted to say out loud. "Missions that don't exist," she said softly. "People who don't officially die. Jobs no one admits they're doing." A long pause. "And I wasn't just part of it," she continued. "For a while, I led one of the teams." Rachel sank into a chair. Warren stared at her like he was seeing her for the first time. "Carol, why here? Why now?" Warren whispered. Carol looked down. Then she said the one truth she never wanted to speak. "Because I walked away." The room stilled. She swallowed. I left the program. I disappeared. I never filed for civilian transition. I never checked in. I didn't want the life. I didn't want the missions. I didn't want the people I lost to stay with me forever. Her voice tightened, almost breaking. But you can't vanish from people like that. Warren dragged a hand over his face. Are you telling me they've been looking for you? They're not here to bring me back, she said. They're here to erase me. Someone cursed under their breath. Rachel looked at the screen again. Carol, how many could there be? Carol studied the formation. At least 20, she whispered. Maybe more, they're staying out of full view. Warren slammed his fist on the table. We can't fight 20 special operators. We barely survived 8 snipers. Carol finally looked up. She wasn't panicked. She wasn't shaken. She wasn't even angry. She was resigned. I'm the one they want, she said. If I leave the compound, maybe. No, Warren snapped. You're not sacrificing yourself. Carol's eyes softened. It might be the only way to save all of you. Warren stepped closer, lowering his voice. You pulled this compound back from the edge. You saved lives today. I'm not letting you walk out there alone. Carol shook her head. You don't understand. They won't stop. They won't negotiate. They won't accept surrender. If I'm here, if they know I'm alive, they'll keep coming. Rachel pushed to her feet. So we fight. Carol met her eyes. Rachel wasn't a soldier. Not by training. Not by career. But she had something Carol respected deeply. Courage. The kind built in quiet hearts. This isn't your fight, Carol said gently. Rachel lifted her chin. Maybe not, but you're here, and we're here, so now it's all of ours. Warren looked at the screen again. They're still advancing. Carol exhaled. She walked to the table, grabbed a marker and began drawing lines, angles, fields of fire. Her voice grew calm. Focused. Cold. The sniper was back. We fortify the south wall, create overlapping sectors, set up tripwires here, here, and here. Move all non-combatants to the lower storage unit. Rachel, get me a thermal scope from Tower 2. Warren, I need every map of the ridge. They stared at her. Not with fear. With belief. And that terrified her even more. She tapped the screen where the kill team was advancing. They want a ghost, she said quietly, so that's what I'll become. Warren swallowed. Carol, what's the plan? She lifted her eyes, steady as stone. We make them regret coming for me. Why did planning for war feel easier than facing the people she might die protecting? Carol moved through the operations room like she was stepping back into a life she'd sworn never to touch again. Her mind sharpened. Her breathing settled. Her voice took on that cold, measured cadence she hated but couldn't fight. The others followed her movements with wide eyes, waiting for instructions, for leadership, for a kind of certainty she didn't feel at all. She drew 3 defensive lines on the map. Warren leaned in. 3. They'll breach the first 2, she said quietly. The third is where we make our stand. Rachel swallowed. And if they break the third? Carol didn't answer. Because if they broke the third, everyone in this compound would be dead before the sun set. She capped the marker and stepped back. Her heartbeat thudded once, too loud, too heavy. Carol, Warren said, softer now, are you sure you're okay? Her eyes flicked to him. Okay. She killed 8 men in the last hour. She'd revealed a past she wanted buried. She was planning a defense against the very people she once trained beside. But she nodded anyway. Not because it was true. Because it was necessary. She turned to leave, but Rachel stepped in front of her, blocking the doorway. Dust streaked her face. Blood soaked her sleeve, but there was fire in her eyes. Don't do this alone, Rachel said. Don't shut us out. Carol didn't move. Rachel. No, Rachel shook her head. You said this is your past coming back, but we're here now. You're not facing this alone. Carol clenched her jaw. People had died because they followed her before. People she cared about. People she couldn't save. I won't let you die for me, Carol whispered. Rachel's voice softened, and we won't let you die alone. Those words hit harder than any bullet ever had. Carol looked away. She couldn't afford this. Couldn't afford to care. Couldn't afford for anyone else to care about her. Care made you slow. Care made you hesitate. Care made you blind. She had lived her whole life, avoiding attachment for a reason. But Rachel had already turned and walked out to gather people. Warren followed her. Carol was alone again. She stared at the maps, at the ridge, at the weapons scattered across the table. Then she exhaled and headed toward the armory. She didn't know how many minutes she had before the kill team reached engagement distance, but she knew what needed to be done. Inside the armory, she opened the metal case on the highest shelf, a case she hoped she'd never touch again. Her fingers skimmed the cold surface. Inside was her old kit. Sniper harness, suppressor, thermal monocular. She even found her old gloves, the ones she wore on missions she still dreamed about, missions she still couldn't talk about. She hesitated, holding the gloves. Her throat tightened. She'd been a different person when she used these. Someone colder, someone carved into shape by commanders who didn't believe in mercy, someone who buried guilt so deep it never had a chance to breathe. Putting these back on meant becoming her again. Becoming the ghost they were coming to kill. She slid the gloves on. They fit too well. She grabbed the suppressor and attached it to the rifle. The metal clicked into place with a sound that felt like a lock turning in her chest. The door behind her creaked. She turned sharply, faster than necessary, only to find a small boy standing there. He couldn't have been more than 9. Dirt on his face, wide eyes, a stuffed bear pinned under his arm. He stared at her rifle, then at her gear. "You're going to stop the bad guys," he said. Not a question. A belief. Her chest tightened painfully. She crouched down so they were eye level. "You should be with the others. Go to the shelter." "I know," he shuffled nervously, "but are you scared?" Carol blinked. Of all the questions she expected today, that wasn't one of them. She inhaled. What was the point of lying? "Yes," she whispered. The boy nodded once, like that answer made sense. Then he handed her his stuffed bear. "For luck," he said simply. "Mom says heroes need luck." Carol's heart stuttered. "I'm not a hero," she said, voice cracking more than she wanted. "You saved us," he replied. "Heroes save people." Before she could respond, before she could breathe, he ran off toward the shelter. Carol stood up slowly, staring at the bear in her hand. No. No, she couldn't keep this. Not now. Not when she might not come back. She set it gently on a shelf. Her radio cracked. "Carol," Warren said, voice shaking, "they're here." She froze. "What direction?" "West." "How many?" "Too many to count." Her stomach dropped. She grabbed her rifle, sprinted out of the armory, and climbed the nearest tower ladder 2 rungs at a time. Wind whipped through her hair. Gunfire cracked in the distance. She reached the top and pressed her thermal monocular to her eye. Heat signatures lit up the horizon. 20, 30, maybe more. They were moving fast now, not cautious, not tactical. Advancing. Because now they knew where she was. Warren's voice came through again. Orders. She should have given them. Should have spoken with confidence. Should have pretended she had this under control. But she couldn't tear her eyes away from the shapes cresting the ridge. They were armored. They carried suppressed rifles. They moved with terrifying precision. They were her past, made flesh, marching toward her with unwavering purpose. Her throat tightened. "Carol," Warren repeated, "what do we do?" She lowered the monocular. Her heart beat once slow, heavy. Then she spoke, calm and steady. "We hold them at the first line. That buys us time. Nobody fires until I call it." Rachel crackled in. "Where will you be?" Her answer was quiet. "The ridge." Warren swore. "Carol, you can't." "I have to." She stepped away from the tower. "They won't stop unless I stop them." She jumped down the ladder, sprinting across the compound. Smoke curled through the air. Medics shouted. Civilians ducked into bunkers. She ran past them all. Toward the broken west gate. Toward the open desert. Toward the people coming to kill her. But no matter how fast she ran, one question echoed in her mind louder than the gunfire ahead. How many parts of herself would she have to kill to survive what came next? Why did running toward danger feel more natural than running away from it? Carol didn't know. She wished she did. Her boots pounded against the dirt as she sprinted toward the west gate, the one closest to the incoming kill team. Wind whipped past her ears, carrying the smell of smoke, metal, and dust. The world blurred in her peripheral vision, but the horizon stayed sharp, painfully sharp. 30 heat signatures. Maybe more. All of them moving like a single organism. She'd trained with people like this. She knew how they thought, how they hunted, how they killed. And now they were hunting her. She cleared the gate and kept running, rifle bouncing against her shoulder, breath controlled, not rushed. The desert stretched out ahead, harsh, open, merciless. Heat shimmered on the sand. Her shadow stretched long behind her as the sun began its climb. She didn't slow. She needed elevation, concealment, and a line of sight the kill team wouldn't expect. Most people ran to safety. Carol ran toward angles, toward the next position, toward the next calculation, toward the person she had forced herself to bury. She ran until the compound was a cluster of buildings behind her, until the ridge loomed ahead like a jagged scar across the earth. She scrambled up the rocks, using her hands when the incline grew steep. Every rock scrape, every breath, every heartbeat dragged her further away from the person she pretended to be, and closer to the one she used to be. Halfway up, her radio crackled. "Carol, stop," Warren called. "You're alone out there." She reached the ridge edge, dropped flat, and crawled forward through the dust. "I know," she replied softly. "That's the problem." Another voice, Rachel. "Carol, please don't do this. We can help you." Carol closed her eyes. "Help me." No one could help her with this. She had a past built from missions that didn't exist, choices she never wanted to speak aloud, losses she never learned how to grieve. The people coming for her didn't leave survivors. They erased threats, cleanly, quietly. The only reason she was still alive was because she'd disappeared. And even that wasn't enough anymore. She opened her eyes and raised the thermal scope. Heat signatures filled the valley below, uniform spacing, tight formation, coordinated advance, dust trails rising behind them like ghosts stretching into the morning air. 25. No, 28. More coming over the hill. Her stomach tightened. They weren't just here to kill her. They were here to make sure she stayed dead. She exhaled shakily. "I need 20 minutes, she said into the radio. "What?" Warren blurted. "For what?" "To thin them out." "Carol, you can't take on 30 of them alone." "I won't take 30, she said. "I'll take whoever gets close." Rachel's voice came through, softer now, scared. "Carol, you're scaring me." Carol didn't answer. She pushed her rifle forward, braced the bipod, and settled into position. The rocks pressed into her ribs. The wind bit at her face. Sweat trickled down her neck. But her hands were steady. The scope revealed the kill team's front line, helmets low, rifles up, scanning. Their comms gear matched a unit she recognized instantly. Her blood ran cold. No insignia. No markers. Black plates. Suppressed rifles. Ghost-tier operators. Her past didn't just come back. It sent the elite. A familiar emotion crept in, one she hated more than fear. Guilt. She whispered into the radio, "Warren, Rachel, get everyone underground, now." "Carol, go." She didn't shout. She didn't beg. She didn't explain. Her tone told them everything. There was a long, painful silence. Then Warren's voice, rough, "Copy, moving them now." Rachel added, "Just don't get yourself killed." Carol almost smiled. Almost. She shifted her scope to the left flank. The kill team fanned out in a slow arc, searching for angles, leaving almost no blind spots. Almost. There was a gap, a small one between two operators near a dry wash. An error, sloppy for their level. They thought no threat existed this far from the compound. She adjusted her aim. The first operator paused to scan with binoculars. Carol fired. The round struck just under his helmet. He collapsed instantly. She shifted. The man beside him turned, not fast enough. Her second shot dropped him before he could raise his rifle. 2. The kill team froze. Then scattered, tactically precisely, like a school of fish that had sensed a predator beneath the waves. Carol reloaded calmly. She aimed for a third, one trying to sprint to cover. The shot hit his thigh armor, staggering him. He didn't fall. Damn. She adjusted and fired again. He dropped. 3. Voices shouted across the valley, controlled, clipped, angry. The kill team was talking fast now, reacting, adjusting formations. She listened. She knew those voices. She'd trained beside them. She followed orders from some of them. And now she could hear them being told. Locate her. Flank her. Close the distance. Her heart clenched. She fired again, cleanly, taking out the point man trying to reposition. 4. But they were learning. They were using terrain. Cover. Shadow. Elevation. They were ghosts just like her. One climbed toward the ridge from the far right. She pivoted, fired, hit his shoulder, non-lethal, but enough to throw him back. 5. Another tried to rush the center, quick, professional, dangerous. She lined up the shot. A round whizzed past her head, 2 inches from her temple. She ducked, heart hammering. They'd found her muzzle flash. They'd found her. She rolled sideways, scraping her elbow on the rocks, and repositioned behind a boulder. Her breath tightened. She was out of time. The kill team advanced fast now, half a dozen of them breaking from cover, moving in a coordinated push to overwhelm her position. Carol, Warren's voice panicked, "Talk to me." She aimed, fired. The closest one fell. 6. She fired again. 7. A round exploded against the ground beside her, sending shards of rock into her cheek. She tasted blood. But she didn't stop. 8. 9. She reloaded, hands moving faster now, urgency clawing into her chest. More climbed the ridge, more than she could count. She hit one, missed the next, repositioned, fired again. 10. A shadow shifted on her left. Someone was close, too close. She spun, pistol out, firing instinctively. 11. Her chest tightened. Her breath grew ragged. They were closing in, dozens now. She was one person. One rifle. One position. One life. And she finally understood. She couldn't win this from here. Half the kill team was still alive and climbing fast. Her radio crackled. "Carol," Rachel's voice broke. "They're surrounding the ridge." Carol exhaled slow, heavy. She whispered the words she hadn't spoken in years. "I know." She pulled her rifle close, slid backward down the slope, boots scraping hard against the rock as she retreated from her position just seconds before bullets tore through the spot she'd been lying in. She stumbled, slid, caught herself. Her heart pounded. She was bleeding from her cheek. Her arm burned where a fragment tore skin, and her shoulder throbbed with every movement. But she kept going. She had to move, had to live, had to buy time. For the compound, for the civilians, for the boy with the stuffed bear. She hit the bottom of the ridge hard, rolled, gasped, and scrambled to her feet. The kill team was seconds behind her. And as she ran through the desert, lungs burning, blood dripping down her face, one chilling thought echoed louder than her heartbeat. They weren't here to fight a battle. They were here to end a chapter. And she was running out of pages. Why did it feel like the earth itself was pushing her forward, like even the desert knew she couldn't stop here? Carol ran with everything she had left. Each breath scraped her lungs raw. Each step jarred her knees, her ribs, her aching shoulder. Blood trickled warm down her cheek, drying in streaks against dust and sweat. Behind her, the kill team advanced like a rising tide, silent, relentless, inevitable. She reached a narrow wash carved into the earth by years of flash floods. Without thinking, she hurled herself down into it, sliding on her hip, gravel ripping at her clothes. She hit bottom hard, teeth rattling. Pain flared. But she forced herself up. She pressed her back against the cool, shadowed wall of the wash, catching a single breath before she looked up toward the ridge. Dark silhouettes crested the rise. They closed the distance far too quickly. Her radio crackled in her ear. "Carol, where are you?" Warren's voice was frantic. She swallowed, throat dry. "I'm buying you time. You're going to get yourself killed." She didn't respond. She turned, sprinting deeper into the wash, feet sinking in patches of soft sand, boots scraping hard stone where the floodwater had carved out steep edges. The shadows shifted as the sun crept higher overhead. She moved quickly, zigzagging through the winding cut in the earth. A gunshot echoed behind her. Then another. Closer. She ducked instinctively as dust exploded from the wash wall beside her face. They were almost on her. She rounded a bend sharply, nearly slipping on loose gravel. Ahead, the wash narrowed into a choke point, barely wide enough for a single person. Good. She dropped to one knee, raised her rifle, and took her first controlled breath in what felt like hours. A shadow appeared at the far end of the wash. She fired. One down. She shifted left and waited. Another came into view, fast, low, tactical. She fired again. Two. But the others were smarter. They didn't rush blindly. They waited for her to move. And then she heard it. Boots scraping above her. Someone was on the ridge above the wash, trying to flank her from above. She had no overhead cover. She pressed into the wall as a burst of suppressed fire tore into the spot she'd stood in seconds earlier. Stone fragments cut her arm. She winced but didn't cry out. She moved again, faster now, deeper into the twisting canyon. Her radio crackled. "Carol, the compound is sealed," Rachel said. Her voice wavered, but there was steel underneath. "We're holding the third line, just get back." Carol didn't respond, because she knew something none of them wanted to acknowledge. If she led this kill team back to the compound, everyone inside would die. She wasn't running toward safety. She was running away from it. For them. Not for herself. Her legs burned now, her lungs seared, her vision blurred each time she blinked. But she kept moving. Eventually the wash opened into a wide basin, flat ground, scattered boulders. Not ideal, not good cover, not enough concealment to keep the kill team from spotting her instantly. But ahead, half hidden behind a ridge of packed earth, she spotted something. An old comms relay tower. Rusty. Derelict. Half collapsed. Perfect elevation. Perfect view. Perfect last stand. A strange calm settled into her bones. She sprinted toward it. As she climbed the crumbling ladder, gunfire erupted from the wash behind her. Bullets ripped into dry earth. One tore a line of heat past her ribcage so close she felt the air split beside her skin. She scrambled onto what had once been the tower's maintenance platform, now half fallen, sloping slightly, but still sturdy enough. She dropped to her stomach and raised her rifle. 30 seconds later, the first operator appeared in the open. She fired. He fell. Another emerged from the wash, firing as he ran. She rolled, aimed, shot him through the shoulder. He spun, dropped. Two more flanked from the west. She shifted, calm despite the pounding in her skull, and struck the closer one in the throat. The other dove behind a boulder, too late. She fired again. The basin fell quiet again. But only for a moment. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Deliberate. Not rushed. Not panicked. Not angry. Someone confident. Someone who knew exactly who she was. She rolled onto her side, checked her magazine, steadied her breath. And froze. A figure stepped into view. Broad-shouldered. Black armor. Helmet tucked under one arm. His face was weathered. Hard. Familiar. Her stomach dropped. She knew him. He wasn't just part of her past. He'd made her. He stepped forward, eyes locked on hers. Spencer. Her heart clenched painfully at the sound of her name in his voice. Colonel, she said quietly. He tilted his head, expression unreadable. You disappeared. I had to. You were one of the best. I didn't want to be. You don't get to choose that. Carol swallowed hard. Her throat burned. You trained me, she whispered. I refined you, he corrected. We build weapons, Spencer. We don't let them walk off and become something else. She tightened her grip on her rifle. I'm not your weapon anymore. The colonel's gaze softened, almost pitying. You can't outrun what you are. She aimed at him. He didn't flinch. Go ahead, he said. But understand, if you kill me, the people behind me will keep coming. And if you don't kill me, he shrugged, I take you back. That's how this ends. Her hands trembled. She wasn't shaking from fear. She was shaking from choice. The hardest kind. He spoke again, softly. You were meant for more than counting inventory in a desert outpost. She blinked hard, fighting the sting behind her eyes. I was meant for peace, she said. He actually smiled, cold, bitter. Peace is death, Spencer. She exhaled. Steady. Silent. Purposeful. No, she whispered. Peace is a decision. She fired. The colonel staggered, eyes wide, betrayal flashing across his face, then fell into the dust. Carol didn't watch him hit the ground. She turned her rifle toward the wash, only to realize the gunfire had stopped. The kill team halted. She listened. Silence. Then her radio crackled softly. Carol, Rachel whispered, is it over? Carol sank down on the slanted platform, back against the rusted railing, head tilted to the sky. Her chest rose and fell in shaky breaths. I don't know, she whispered. For a long moment she just breathed. The sun was warm on her face. The air smelled like dust and iron. Her hands were still steady, even though everything inside her was. Finally, she pressed the radio again. "Rachel, Warren, I'm coming home." A pause. Then Rachel's voice broke. "Copy that." Carol slowly climbed down from the tower. Her legs shook. Her vision blurred. Each step felt heavier. But for the first time since dawn, she didn't feel like she was running from herself. She was walking toward something else. Toward belonging. Toward redemption. Toward the people who waited for her. Toward a place that somehow had become home. When she reached the basin floor, she stopped one last time and looked back at the ridge. The place 8 snipers died. The place she became a ghost again. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "I'm still here." Then she turned and walked toward the compound. Toward the future she chose. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.